Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar on the Beneficial Ownership Information Report filing. My name is Brian Doolin. I manage BD Consultants, which is a CPA practice focusing on state and local business taxes. Today, we're going to go over a summary of the filing. In addition to focusing on the BOIR report, here is a list of other services that I provide if you need assistance with assessing federal and state credits and incentives. If you want to look at sales and use tax issues that your business may be facing, I also specialize in local business taxes such as San Francisco and Los Angeles, business personal property tax filings, and other non-income tax filings such as the Washington B&O tax and the Delaware franchise tax. So let's begin. First, we're going to talk about the who, what, when of the BOIR requirements. So to start, the Corporate Transparency Act requires certain types of U.S. and foreign entities to report beneficial ownership information to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or call it the FinCEN for short. The report requires information about the entity, its beneficial owners, and in certain cases, company applicants, and we'll talk about those definitions later on. So an entity is required to report the beneficial ownership information if it is deemed to be a reporting company and does not qualify for a list of 23 exempt filers. Beneficial ownership information is information about the entity. It includes information about beneficial owners. And again, we'll talk about who is a beneficial owner of the company later on. And in certain cases, information about the company applicants. The person submitting this report must certify that this information is true, correct, and complete. When does this form need to be filed? Well, a reporting company that had already existed as of January 1st, 2024, must file its BOIR report by January 1st of 2025. If you are a reporting company and you were created or registered to do business after January 1st, 2024, then technically you had within 90 days after receiving the actual or public notice that your creation was effective to file this report. And again, if you have not filed your report, feel free to reach out to me because I'm assisting a lot of taxpayers with this filing and I can provide you and your team a quote. If you are a reporting company that had registered to do business after January 1st of 2025, then you must file the BOIR within 30 days of receiving this notice that your creation was effective. Where do you file this report? Here's a link below. It's through the boiefiling.fincen.gov website. This is an electronically filed form. You can either choose to draft the form on a PDF version that's available at the link, or you can fill out a web-based version and submit it online. Both versions are submitted online, but the PDF version allows you to work on this at your convenience and save it to your computer. So does your company have to report its beneficial owners? So not all companies are required to report the BOIR, or not all companies are required to file the BOIR. Like I mentioned earlier, there's certain exemptions from having to file this. Your company is only required to file if you meet the reporting rules definition of a reporting company, and again, do not qualify for a list of about 23 exemptions. Questions to ask yourself. One, is my company a reporting company? Two, is my company exempt from the reporting requirements? And three, what happens if my company does not report the BOI in the required time frame? So let's first talk about whether your company has to report its beneficial owners. The same question can be said, is my company a reporting company? So your company may have a reporting obligation if it is formed under US laws and is either a corporation, which includes S corps, an LLC, or was an entity created by filing a document with a Secretary of State or similar office under the law of a state or Indian tribe, or the company can be created under the laws of a foreign country, but had registered to do business in any US state or tribal jurisdiction by filing with the Secretary of State or similar office. So it can include both domestic and foreign entities. Is my company exempt from the reporting requirements? The reporting rule exempts 23 specific types of entities from the BOIR, and if you meet one of these exemptions, you would not be required to submit the BOI report to FinCEN. We're not going to talk about each one of these exemptions in detail today, but here is a list of the 23 exemptions. Some common ones include tax-exempt entities, large corporations, which on a high level is defined as having more than 20 US employees and having reported more than 5 million of US generated gross receipts on the prior year tax return. This list also includes insurance companies, venture capital fund advisors, banks, governmental authorities, and a few others. Again, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about whether your company is exempt. So now that you're a reporting company, you are required to report information about your beneficial owners. And we'll talk about the definition of beneficial owners later on. But if you fail to file this BOIR report, this slide lists the penalties that might be imposed. So the willful failure to report complete or updated beneficial ownership information to FinCEN will or may result in civil or criminal penalties, including civil penalties of up to $500 for each day that the violation continues, or it can include criminal penalties, including imprisonment for up to 2 years and or a fine up to $10,000. So it's in your best interest that if you do meet the definition of a reporting company, that you get this filed on time. Also, senior officers of an entity that fails to file the BOIR might be held accountable for that failure. So, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about the definition of who are beneficial owners. Generally, there's one of two tests. It's an OR test. So if one of these tests applies, you would be considered a beneficial owner of the company. Beneficial owner is any individual. So we're talking about individuals here that either directly or indirectly exercise substantial control over a company or own or controls at least 25% of the ownership interests of a reporting company. So let's talk about the first test. Again, only one of those two tests have to be met to be considered a beneficial owner. What is substantial control? An individual exercises substantial control over a reporting company if the individual meets any of the four general criteria. So only one of these four criteria have to be met. The individual is a senior officer. The individual has authority to appoint or remove certain officers or a majority of directors on the reporting company. The individual is an important decision maker, or the individual has any other form of substantial control over the company. So that's the first test. I mentioned that the second test, which is an OR test, is that you could be considered a beneficial owner if you own or control at least 25% of the ownership interest of the company. Any of the following may be considered an ownership, which is an interest in interest, equity, stock, or voting rights, capital profits interest, convertible instruments, ownership and options or other non-binding privileges to buy or sell any of the foregoing, and any other instrument, contract, or other mechanism used to establish ownership. There are certain exemptions from being considered a beneficial owner. This includes uh, individuals who are deemed to be a minor, nominee, intermediary, custodian, or agent of the company, an employee of the company, an inheritor, and a creditor. I mentioned that in addition to reporting beneficial owners, certain companies have to also report information about the company applicants. Now, these would be individuals who were involved in the actual Secretary of State filing, but for this requirement to apply, your business would have to have been registered with the Secretary of State after January 1st of 2024. So if that applies and you did register your business after January 1st of 2024, there are two categories of company applicants. The first category is the direct filer, and this would be the individual who directly filed the document that created your reporting company, this individual would actually have to physically or electronically file the document with the Secretary of State or similar office. The second category of a company applicant is the individual that directs or controls the filing action. So the definition is the other possible company applicant is the individual who was primarily responsible for directing or controlling the filing of the creation or first registrant document. This individual would be a company applicant even though the individual did not actually file the document with the Secretary of State or similar office. So when you're filing these reports, which sort of information should you be collecting? As that would be the information that you're reporting on the BOIR. So first, the return or the informational return will ask for information about your reporting company. This includes a full legal name, any trade name or doing business name, your complete business address, the state, tribal, or foreign jurisdiction of formation, and your FEIN. For each beneficial owner, in certain cases, we had talked about company applicants for those that were established after January 1st of 2024. For all those individuals that you deem to be beneficial owners and company applicants, it's going to ask for their full legal name, date of birth, complete current residential address, a unique identifying number. So this usually is their driver's license number, could be US passport information or a foreign passport. And it will ask you to upload an image of those documents that you retrieved the identifying number from. So this slide talks about certain special reporting rules that might apply to certain companies. So the reporting rule includes 4 special reporting rules that may affect your company's reporting obligations. If you're owned by an exempt entity, you do not need to report information about any beneficial owner whose ownership interests in a reporting company are held through one or more of the entities, all of which themselves are exempt from the reporting company definition. So we had talked about how one of the 23 exemptions that apply to the BOIR filing includes tax exempt entities. So you'll have to look at your ownership structure to determine whether you are owned by a tax exempt entity, as there might be some special reporting rules that apply. Um, we talked about the exemption of reporting company applicants if you were created or registered before January 1st of 2024. The BOIR filing doesn't require individuals or companies to report a FinCEN identifier, but usually it is recommended if you are an individual to get a FinCEN identifier. What happens is that you apply, you receive this identifier, and if you are included on a handful of BOIR reports, instead of your preparer asking for your driver's license and other personal information multiple times, all you need to provide is your unique FinCEN number, and that will take care of the reporting requirements. It's just going to be up to you to update the information on your FinCEN account going forward. So that's essentially what this slide talks about. If you want to apply for a FinCEN number and you're an individual, basically the slide says that individuals may electronically apply for FinCEN identifiers. In this application, the individual must provide their name, date of birth, address, unique identifying numbers. So essentially what we had talked about, that you would have to report on the BOIR report anyway. But again, if you are involved in multiple reporting companies and from an identity theft or other security threat perspective, it might be a good idea to just get one unique FinCEN number and update that yourself going forward. So feel free to reach out to me. My number and my email are below. Again, if you are a company that does not meet one of the 23 exemptions for the BOIR filing, and you were created before January 1st of 2024, you'll have through the end of this year to get your BOIR filed. Because there are harsh penalties, I would recommend reaching out to someone who is specializing in this form, such as myself, to at least provide a quote for assistance. If you have any questions, feel free to email or call me, and I look forward to staying in touch. And I thank everyone who joined today's webinar.